My name is Reese Williams, as Nick has said. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Manchester City of Literature. And Manchester City of Literature is a UNESCO-designated organisation which champions literature in all forms in Manchester. I'm really delighted to be here. We've been focusing a lot of our work over the past 18 months in particular on multilingualism within Manchester. Over 200 languages are spoken here, and we're really proud of that fact. But yeah, that's enough about us. Let me tell you a little bit about the Poetry Translation Centre and the Sarah Maguire Prize. So set up in 2004, the Poetry Translation Centre is the only UK organisation dedicated to translating, publishing and promoting contemporary poetry from Africa, Asia and Latin America. They introduce extraordinary poets from around the world to new audiences through books, online resources and bilingual events. They also champion diversity and representation in the arts and forge enduring relations with diaspora communities in the UK. They explore the craft of translation through their long-running program of workshops, which is open to all. Now, for what we're here for tonight, the Sarah Maguire Prize for Poetry, rather. So there's a bit of a background rumble in there. Give me a second. Sorry about that. So the Sarah Maguire Prize for Poetry and Translation has been established in memory of the great Sarah Maguire, who lived from 1957 to 2017, and is the founder of the Poetry Translation Centre and champion of international poetry. And the aim of the prize is to showcase the most exciting contemporary poetry from around the world and to champion the art of poetry translation. The prize is awarded every 2 years for the best book of poetry from a living poet from a non-European country in English translation, published anywhere in the world. And the winning poets and their translators divide a prize of £3,000. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Really excited to hear some readings and some work, and of course hear about the Sarah Maguire Prize for Poetry and Translation. I'm going to hand over, I believe, to Ali Al-Jamri, who is our host for the evening. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening with us online.
Hello, and thank you for the very good introduction, both from Nick and Reese. I'm your host. I'm Ali Al-Jamri, a poet based here in Manchester, one of Manchester's multilingual city poets. So when we were looking for these connections, it was a real pleasure to host this, really, as I've worked with and spoken with at length with several of the panelists tonight. So it was a deep honor, really, to be able to join with you all again tonight. And to hear from the work. So a very quick introduction, and everyone will then be introduced properly when their time comes. But we have with us two of the shortlisted poets and their translators. You'll be hearing first from Najwan Darwish from Palestine and his translator Kareem James Abu-Zeid for the translation of Najwan's amazing book, Exhausted on the Cross, which I have in front of me here. And after hearing from them, we'll also be hearing from the translators of Salim Barakat and his first book-length translated work into English, Come Take a Gentle Stab. Salim was unable to be with us tonight, but we are joined by co-translators Huda, Fakhreddine and Jayson, Iwen. And we'll come back to give fuller introductions as we get to each pair. There'll also be time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat as they come in. There'll be time to ask them later on. With that out of the way, then we come straight to Najwan Darwish and his book, Exhausted on the Cross, which was published first in 2018, I believe, and then its translation published in 2021. Najwan Darwish is one of the foremost contemporary Arab poets. Since the publication of his first collection in 2000, his poetry has been hailed across the Arab world and beyond as a singular expression of the Palestinian struggle. He has published 8 books in Arabic, and his work has been translated into more than 20 languages. NYRB Poets published Darwish's Nothing More to Lose, translated also by Kareem James Abu-Zeid in 2014, which was picked as one of the best books of the year by NPR and nominated for several awards. Darwish lives between Haifa and his birthplace, Jerusalem. Kareem James Abu-Zeid is a translator, editor, writer, and scholar who works across multiple languages. Abu-Zeid has received numerous awards, fellowships, honors, and residencies for his work as a translator from Arabic and as a scholar, including the Penn Center USA 2017 Translation Prize and a 2018 National Endowment for the Arts Translation Grant. He is also the author of the forthcoming book, The Poetics of Adonis and Yves Bonnefoy, hopefully I've pronounced the names right, Poetry as Spiritual Practice. He lives in the countryside just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, from where he's joining us today. Najwan and Kareem, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Ali. So we're going to start, we're going to read several poems from the book, and Najwan will read the Arabic first, and then I'll read the English for each poem. Go ahead. Najwan, I think you're on mute, if you want to unmute. There we go.
مساء الخير جميعا. شكرا علي على التقديم. جيرة الكرمل تجاور البحر، لكنك لا تستطيع أن تنادي عليه يا جار تفضل اشرب فنجان قهوة، في حين أن الكرمل يزورني من النافذة دون أن يستأذن أو يحاول مرة الدخول من الباب. هو صاحب الملك على أي حال. أحيانا تصلني أجراس كنيسة من قاع وادي النسناس، وأحيانا يجيئني أذان الفجر خافتا من جامع الاستقلال يحمله النسيم القديم من وادي الصليب. أتباع البهاء لا يكفون عن دفع $1 في اليوم وملء المدينة بحدائق هاربة من شيراز. وفي الكبابير لا ينهض أتباع غلام ميرزا أحمد من غيبوبة المديح وتصيد الحق في أحاديث ومرويات. أما الأجاويد فمشوقاتهم تصلني من الخلوة الكبيرة عند سفح حرمون، مثل هذه المناديل البيض التي تخبئ ليالي 1000 سنة من السواد. لكن أنا الذي لا أتبع سوى نفسي، ما الذي أفعله بين الأتباع بلا هدف بين البحر والجبل، هنا حيث ينتهي الزمان.
Sorry. Mount Carmel. Though you're right beside it, you can't call out to the sea, neighbor, come join me for a coffee. Instead, and without my permission, my other neighbor, Carmel, visits me through the window, never trying to enter by the door. It owns the place, at any rate. Sometimes the church bells reach me from the depths of Wadi Nisnas, and some mornings the call to prayer comes in quietly from the Istiklal Mosque, borne on an ancient breeze from Wadi Salib. And the Baha'is keep giving alms and filling the city with Persian gardens that escaped from Shiraz. And in Kababir, the followers of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad maintain their naps of devotion and hunt for truth in the Prophet's words. As for the holy men among the Druze, their poems reach me from the temple at the foot of Mount Hermon, like the white headscarves of their women, the ones that hide 1,000 years of darkness. And I, aimless between the mountain and the sea, I who follow no one but myself, what am I doing here among all these devotees, where time has found its end? Najwan, you're muted again.
كنت أعرف دائما، استيقظت فلم أجدها، جاء لصوص وأنا نائم وسرقوها. كنت أعرف دائما، كنت أعرف كنت أنتظر هذا النهار، انتظرته مرارا عند المنعطفات في الكوابيس. ليس الأمر مروعا، سرقوها، كنت أعرف أن هذا سيحدث، لكن ماذا سأصنع الآن بسمائها الزرقاء، ببحرها وجبلها، بنفسي وبكل ما تركه اللصوص وراءهم؟
I always knew. I woke up and she wasn't there. Thieves came while I was sleeping and carried her away. I knew it. I always knew. Often at the twists and nightmares, I'd waited for that day. There's no cause for alarm. They stole her, and I always knew it would happen. But what should I do now with her blue sky, with her mountains and sea, with myself and everything else the thieves left behind?
عندما أيقظوك في الفجر إلى رسمية عودة. عندما أيقظوك في الفجر، عندما علقوك من يدك كالذبيحة. مثلك كان المسيح فدائيا، لكنهم حكموه وصلبوه في بحر نهار واحد. أما أنت فيا لصليبك يرفع كل فجر. كان اسمه على القوائم السوداء، كانت أمه تنام على وسادة من الكوابيس. من يسندها بين نساء قليلات أمام سجن المسكوبية، معلقة من يدها إلى أبعد نجمة في الكون؟ أيقظوك في الفجر مرة أخرى، علقوك من يدك كالذبيحة.
They woke you at dawn to Rasmi Aude. When they woke you at dawn, when they hung you up for slaughter. Christ was a fidei, just like you, but he was condemned and crucified in the sea of a single day, while you, your cross is raised with every dawn. His name was on their blacklist. His mother slept on a pillow of nightmares. Which of these few women outside the Moscovia jail can catch her when she falls, hanging as she is from the farthest star of the cosmos? They've woken you at dawn again. They've hung you up for slaughter.
كل هذه الاعترافات، النكران تلقيته بلمعة ابتسامة. النكران تلقيته بلمعة ابتسامة. كنت أربأ عن دفع الأثمان، وما ضرني أن أنام مجهولا وقد عرفت نفسي. أما الآن فلا أعرف لما يلمع الحزن مثل نحاس صلد في الظهيرة. لما تتعافر الرمال كأن جملا هج وعلى ظهره الكعبة. يا رب، لم يكن هذا ما أريده. ماذا أصنع بكل هذه الاعترافات؟
All this recognition. I accepted the disavowal with the flicker of a smile. I wasn't willing to pay the price and never minded being unknown as long as I knew myself. But now I can't tell why sorrow is gleaming like copper in the sun, nor why the sands are swirling as if a camel were fleeing with the Kaaba on its back. Lord, I never wanted this. What should I do with all this recognition?
قصيدة عرضية بسبب امرأة. وصلت إلى هذه المدينة بسبب موعد عرضي مع امرأة، وها هي سنوات 7 تنقضي وأنا فيها. تلك المدينة أيضا قطعت الجسر إليها بسبب موعد كان هو الآخر عرضيا. كل مكان ذهبت إليه كان بسبب امرأة، ورغم جميع مزاعم الجوفاء أن النساء بلا ذمام، فإن دليلي كان دائما امرأة. ولدتني امرأة، وامرأة أمسكت أصابعي وكتبت وما زالت تكتب حتى بعد موتها. كل بيت سكنته بنته امرأة أو ملكته امرأة أو خسرته امرأة. بلادي امرأة، وهذه الإلهة الأم التي أجر الصليب في شوارعها امرأة. وحين كانت جثتي في العراء ممنوعة من الدفن في حياة سابقة، خرجت لهم من الظلام لتدفنني امرأة. حين لم يصدقني أحد صدقتني امرأة، وبسبب امرأة عشت الحياة بالطول والعرض. من المؤسف حقا أن الرجال وحدهم سيدفنونني.
Because of a woman. I came to this city because of a casual date with a woman, and now 7 years have gone by. And I crossed the bridge to that other city because of a date with a woman. It too was casual. Everywhere I've gone was because of a woman. And despite all my hollow claims that women are disloyal, my guide was always a woman. A woman gave birth to me, and a woman grabbed my fingers and started writing, and she's still writing, even after her death. Every house I've ever lived in was built by a woman, or owned by a woman, or lost by a woman. My country's a woman, and this mother goddess whose streets I drag a cross through is also a woman. And in a past life, when my corpse lay out in the open and they forbade them to bury me, it was a woman who emerged from the shadows to lay me in the earth. When no one believed me, a woman believed me. And because of a woman, I lived life to the fullest. It's regrettable that only men will carry my coffin this time around.
تعب المعلقون. تعب المعلقون أنزلنا لنستريح. نجر تواريخ لا أرض ولا سماء. يا رب أرح ذبيحتك. لم تكن لك أم ولم يكن لك أب، ولم تر إخوتك معلقين بمخلب الفجر البارد. لم تحب إنسانا، لم يهجرك إنسان، ولم يأكل من يدك الموت. أنت لن تفهم عذابنا. لست الملك داود لأجلس عند باب الندم أنوح لك المزامير بعد الخطايا. أنزلني، أريد أن أستريح.
Exhausted on the cross. The ones hanging are tired, so bring us down and give us some rest. We drag histories behind us here where there's neither land nor sky. Lord, sharpen your knife and give your sacrifice its rest. You had no mother or father, and you never saw your brothers hanging from the cold talons of dawn. You loved no one, and no one ever abandoned you, and death never ate from your hands. You cannot know our pain. I'm not King David. I won't sit at the gate of regret and sing you psalms of lamentation after the sins. Bring me down. Let me have my rest.
صبي الزيتون في إثر جبرة، إبراهيم جبرة. قصتي أنني بلا قصة، وسيرتي مكتوبة على مياه هذا الجدول. من العبث أن تبحث عني، لن تجدني. أنا مجرد كلمات رددها صبي على جبل الزيتون وهو يحسب أن الأغصان تحفظها. قصتي أنني بلا قصة.
The Boy of Olives, following Jabra Ibrahim Jabra. My story is I have no story, and my biography is written on the waters of this stream. There is no point searching. You won't find me. I'm merely words a boy recited on the Mount of Olives, thinking the branches would preserve them. My story is I have no story.
رايتي المهزومة. لو قدر لي أن أعود فلن أعود تحت راية أخرى. أعانقك بيدين مقطوعتين، لا أريد أجنحة في الجنة. أريد مراقدكم عند ضفة النهر، أريد الأزل على طاولة الفطور مع الخبز والزيت. أريدك أنت يا أرض، يا راية المهزومة.
My defeated banner. This is the last poem we'll read this evening. My defeated banner. If I could come back, I wouldn't come under any other banner. I'd still embrace you with two severed hands. I don't want wings in paradise. I just want your graves by the river. I want eternity at the breakfast table with the bread and oil. I want you, Earth, my defeated banner. Thank you.
Thank you, Najwan, and thank you, Kareem, for those amazing readings. It was really beautiful to hear that in both languages and to hear the clarity and the vision of the translation come through, and how, of course, the translator's work is their own, but you can also hear Najwan's clarity in Arabic come through in the clarity of the English, which I only really appreciate hearing them back to back. But there'll be time for that conversation later. What I would like to turn to then is our next pair of readers, who are the co-translators of Come Take a Gentle Stab by Salim Barakat, which again I have here. And we'll put links and talk about where you can buy all of the books at the end of the event tonight. So this is the first full-length translation of a book by Salim Barakat into English. Salim Barakat is a Kurdish Syrian writer who's considered one of the most innovative poets and novelists writing in the Arabic language. He was brought up in northern Syria and spent most of his youth there. After living in Beirut and Cyprus, he moved to Sweden in 1999, where he still resides. A prolific writer, Barakat has published dozens of novels and collections of poetry, and is distinguished from his contemporaries for the innovative use of style and theme within his writing. And I think, as we will see, his desire to break Arabic comes through even in the translations we will hear. Although Salim can't join us, we do have audio recordings of him having recorded some of his poems, which we'll hear today. We're also joined by Huda Fakhreddine, who is an associate professor of Arabic literature at the University of Pennsylvania. She's a translator of Arabic poetry and the author of several scholarly books. Jayson Iwen, and I hope I've pronounced that right, Jayson, I apologize if I haven't, is the author of 6 Trips in 2 Directions, a momentary joke book, Gnarly Wounds, and Rose and Blood, which won the 2020 Miller-Williams Poetry Prize. He's a professor of writing and English literature at the University of Wisconsin-Superior. Huda and Jayson, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Ali, for this generous introduction. It's lovely to be here with you all. Salim has made it a little bit difficult for us, as he often does. So we have a recording by him of 2 excerpts, and we're going to read the translation. But then if we have enough time, Jayson and I have each prepared another excerpt, and we'll only read the translation there. Jayson, would you like to begin?
Sure.
So I think we'll do it the other way around. Jayson will read the translation, and then I'll play the Arabic in Salim's voice.
Okay. You want to start with revenge?
Yes.
All right. Revenge. A. The coats are all there. The winds are all there. Footprints deep in the snow, and the snow all there. The lamps, houses, last apparitions all there. So gather in your tame hands all they can hold of perfection, and strive so the scene may be a tamed echo. B. An unease like morning preoccupies those approaching my end, and I, struggling under a great net, hang place like a prisoner's pants on the line, that delicate line, running from the origin of comedy to your moan. C, the abundance of naught is I, and will is my suspicion. D, rage is the sign of night, and water a thought ahead of its own completion. E, like a shoe polished, like a nickel doorknob, thus is your scream. Vocabulary: day, anger masked in air, wind, the steps of a word towards its secret, sound, the ruin of form, longing, gold scattered on the velvet of the end, space, the shaper of light, nothing, the humor of shadows languishing in its seat, writing, violence testing the forgotten, number, the yield of futility, fruit, the tree's proof of a past that eludes all proofs, mask, the manifest's moaning, distance, repeated panting, certainty, a murmuring on the other side, resurrection, a childhood justifying reason, gold, a bar fight, life, a golden bullet. As for you, dweller in endings, don't stray too long, lest dinner get cold. Thank you.
انتقام. المعاطف كلها هناك، الرياح كلها هناك، الخطى الغائصة في الثلج والثلج كله هناك، القناديل والبيوت والأشباح الأخيرة كلها هناك. فاجمع بيديك الأليفتين ما تتسعان من كمال، واجتهد أن يكون المشهد صداك الأليف. برم كطبائع الصباحات يشغل القادمين إلى نهايتي، وأنا في نزعي تحت الشباك الكبيرة أعلق المكان كسراويل سجين إلى الحبل ذاك الرقيق الممتد من أول الملهاة إلى أنينكم. وفرة الهباء أنا، والمشيئة ظني. الغضب إشارة الليل، والماء فكرة تتقدم كما لها. كحذاء يلتمع صباغه، كمقبض باب من نيكل، هكذا صرخة. النهار غضب يتخفى في قناع الهواء، الريح خطوة الكلمة في اتجاه سرها، الصوت خراب الشكل، الحنين ذهب منثور على مخمل النهاية، الفضاء مشكل الضوء، العدم فكاهة الظلال في مجلسها المضجر، الكتابة بطش يمتحن المنسي، الرقم حصيلة العبث، الثمر برهان الشجرة على ماض يضلل كل برهان، القناع أنين ظاهر، المسافة لهاث معاد، الأكيد تمتمة في الجهة الأخرى، القيامة طفولة تؤكد العقل، الذهب عراك في خان، الحياة طلقة من ذهب. أما أنت أيها المقيم في الخاتمة فلا تسرحن طويلا لئلا يبرد العشاء.
The second piece are two excerpts, the opening and the ending of a book-length poem titled Syria. Don't ask me to master discipline, to master precision from now on. The stupefied heights have torn their vests, and the stupefied lowlands, like the stupid expanse, are useless from now on. My knees gave out, the sky gave out. The sky will be fixed by invaders, the defunct sky, the sky that apron stained by the dribble of blood. This sky, the chant of madness, the nightingale, the dance of the nightingale on a dragon's tail, the sky, the jerking from one belief to another, no proof of the sky after this, no proof of a ladder to it, no ladder to descend from it to the human, O country. tearing and mending of the soul, the fury of stoning with ancestors' bones, water ancestors, mud ancestors, the fury of stoning with graves deceived of their corpses, the fury of the country, O country. You are the bags in which the disappointed gathers his clothes, his tenacity, and the stolen throats of his children. Legitimacy auctions you off, certainty is auctioned off within you. You are the auction of shrines looted, of graves looted, O country. A survey of property, a castle in ruins, and invaders standing guard. Never will I be asked for control mastered like precision mastered from now on. No, my grandmother, the forest, won't return me to what I was from now on. My grandfather, the mountain, won't return me to what I was from now on. My brothers, the narrow roads, won't return me to what I was from now on. My sisters, the heavy rocks in rivers, won't return me to what I was from now on. What an inheritance. What an inheritance of bewilderment's blessings you are, O country, my country, you, O country. أيها البلد.
سوريا. لا تسألوني الضبط متقنا كالربط متقنا بعد الآن. الأعالي مخبلة مزقت صدرتها والأسافل مخبلة كالأنحاء الخبل لا ترتجى بعد الآن. ركبتاي خارتا والسماء خارت. السماء يصلحها الغزاة، السماء العطل، السماء الوزرة بالدم عليها من شلشله. السماء شدو الجنون البلبل ورقص البلبل فوق ذيل التنين. السماء الركل من معتقد إلى معتقد. لا دليل على السماء بعد، لا دليل على سلم إليها أو نزول منها بسلم إلى الإنسان أيها البلد. فتق في الروح ورتق، وإلى الرجم بعظام الأسلاف الماء والأسلاف الطين. وإلى الرجم بالمراقد جوفا خدعت لم تشغلها جثث. وإلى البلد أيها البلد الأكياس، يجمع المخذول فيها ثيابه وعناده وحناجر أولاده المنتزعة. مزاد الشرع عليك، مزاد اليقين فيك، مزاد المزارات السطو والمدافن السطو أيها البلد. مسح في الأملاك، بقايا قصر وغزاة حرس. ألا لا أسألن الضبط كالربط متقنا بعد الآن. ألا لن تعيدني جدتي الغابة إلى ما كنته بعد الآن. لن يعيدني جدي الجبل إلى ما كنته بعد الآن. لن يعيدني إخوتي الطرق الضيقة إلى ما كنته بعد الآن. لن تعيدني شقيقاتي الصخور ثقيلة في مجال الأنهار إلى ما كنته بعد الآن. يا لك إرثا من نعم المشكل أيها البلد، بلدي أنت أيها البلد.
Now we'll proceed without the Arabic. Jayson.
All right. I'll read a poem from the last one in the collection. It's from an interesting series of poems, mostly to animals, but in characteristic fashion. This is entitled Homo erectus. So, you have an axe then. You have a spear, up on 2 feet, a hunter with a heart that flutters like the wings of avian prey and falls like animal feet on damp grass and mud and rock. But your past still walks beside you on all fours. You are the first wanderer among inventors of stone axe and spear. Out of the south, which split coincidentally from the other empty vectors, directions into which you divided a migrating race, conceived from intercourse of air with sand. So there, you have a mind with you, the mind of an axe. And there, you have a mind with you, the mind of a spear. And there, the first hunter is with you, the mind of the weary blow and ferocious ploy. You have bequeathed to the descendants their desires in spoonfuls between their teeth, hunters and peddlers of wounds, thieves who steal from death his door keys, his tobacco, and the final pages of his account book.
And this last piece we'll read is an excerpt from another book-length poem that's titled All the Doors, Al-Abwabu Kulluha. And I'm contending with the sun here, but that will also work. Why not? All are doors, doors that do not upright the shadows flung against them by trees in the square. Convex doors, concave doors, low, seasons enter them hunched, high, lands climb to them on ropes of war. Doors only to be broken by kicking feet and bashing skulls. Doors leveled into earth, open onto the press of darkness and water wheels. Doors with the cunning to shut by padlock of fever, or the cunning to open at the sound of a grieving voice. Doors tightly shut like the months of war. Doors, fallacies of categorization, proofs in the sandalwood of the enchanted forest. Doors that will not be shut before the kings finish slaughtering their banquet guests. Lean into the doors with shoulders made of northern stone. No door without grief, no door without a threshold that grief has already crossed or will soon. Lean on its creaking. A door without creaking is a door emptied of grief or flooded with grief until gagged. The door feels no disgrace. Disgrace is behind the door or before it. Rags that are cities and villages that are unwearable tatters. Fates are roads you travel in the traffic of wretched fortunes. As for the beer froth, it's been the same froth since beer found its faith. Remedy the burdened air with air, and color with color, and ruin with ruin, and disaster with disaster, and lack with lack, and wreck with wreck, and punctured ships with the confounded sea, and a scream with a scream. Remedy the universe with an excess of its improvised order. And I think we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Huda. Thank you, Jayson. That was absolutely amazing to hear. And thank you as well to Salim for his recordings ahead of tonight. And as with the last pair, it was amazing to hear. I've got someone applauding again in the chat as well. It was amazing to hear the interplay between the Arabic and the English. So I think now would be a good time, maybe, Nick, to bring everybody onto the screen. Is it possible to do that? Because we'll be coming over to Q&A. Everyone is welcome as well to put any questions that you have in the chat. Now, a few words I wanted to share, because I'm perhaps in that privileged position of having both of the books in front of me and having read them very recently. And although there are two books translated from Arabic and shortlisted for the Sarah Maguire Prize, there are two very different books. Najwan's book, you have this amazing clarity of Arabic, this brevity of language, brevity of poems in comparison to Salim, Barakat, and you also have the book as just a singular collection, all nearly 80, 100 poems that are in Exhausted on the Cross come from the same Arabic book, Ta'ib al-Mu'allaqin, whereas the Come, Take a Gentle Stab, you feel that Salim Barakat likes to, when I read it, I felt that he turns sense into senselessness and then creates new sense out of that senselessness. It's also, he writes much longer poems. Almost all of the poems that we heard are extracts. And the book itself is a collection of collections spanning 1971, I believe, to 2019. So although they are two books from the same language, translated into the same language, they are also two very, very different books. So I think with that said, I'd like to pose some questions, and I have a couple of questions for both groups. I think I might try and go one at a time, one to Najwan and Kareem, then one to Jayson and Huda. So for Najwan and Kareem, it would be very interesting to hear, I think to start with, about the title and the process of translating it, because I think that captures some of the work that carries through the entire work.
Najwan, do you want to say anything about the title in Arabic and how you picked it, or why you picked it for this collection? And then I can say a few words about translating it. Mute is on. There we go.
The only thing I would say about the Arabic title, that it refers to شو الجمعة الحزينة كريم? Sad Friday.
Good.
Yeah. So go ahead, Huda. Sorry.
Good
Okay.
Friday.
The Good Friday. Okay, good name in English to call it Good Friday. In Arabic, we call it the Sad Friday. So it says, اليوم علق على خشبة الذي علق الأرض على المياه. And by the end of it, it says, نسجد لآلامك أيها المسيح فأرنا قيامتك المجيدة. The title is coming from there. It's coming from probably my childhood imaginary. And all this heritage of Jerusalem and crucifixion story. So it comes from there.
And I'll just say about translating it. So for anyone here who doesn't know Arabic, so the Arabic title Ta'ab al-Mu'allaqun would be something more literally translated as the ones hanging are tired, something like that, or have become tired, something like that. And that's obviously not, in Arabic, it's concise, it's poetic, it's great. In English, to translate it literally, it kind of ruins the poetry of it. So, and so what I did, obviously, was just to go translate the image a little bit more, and Exhausted on the Cross was kind of what came out of that, and it had, I felt, a nice poetic ring to it in English, and I thought it also captured a lot of the, exhaustion is a big sort of core theme in the book, and weariness and lassitude, and I felt that came through with that. Of course, some stuff is lost when you just read the title. You don't know if it's one in English, if it's just one person who's on the cross, or many. The Arabic has the nice plural. But then when you get to that poem in the text, in the book, the poem called Exhausted on the Cross, the first line I then give a literal translation to. So the first line is, it repeats the title, but in English it's the ones hanging are tired. So I sort of explain it out that way. But again, a very literal translation didn't work good in English there. So that, and I'd say it's typical of our process, where we often have to step back a little bit and go past the just literal meaning of the individual words.
Thank you. Now this question is for Huda and Jayson, and I think before we talk about translation, it'd be nice to focus a little bit on Salim in a way. Well, still talking about translation really is, he's been overlooked in English. I think that's fair to say. This it is quite shocking in a way that in a 50-year career, this is the first book length translation. So why do you think it is that he has been overlooked until now, at least in the English language?
Huda, do you want to take the first stab at this?
I have some thoughts. I think he's also been overlooked in Arabic. So people know him in Arabic, know of him. They treat him as a celebrity. And for various reasons, they are followers or fans. But I wonder how closely he's been read. I mean, Salim's work poses the question of translatability or untranslatability for a translator, but it also poses the question of readability and unreadability for its original audience. So the easy answer to your question, Ali, is that maybe he's difficult to translate. But I don't accept that. I don't like that as an answer. I think it's a good challenge that he poses for both his readers and his translators. He has been translated into other languages, into French and into Spanish and into Catalan and into Kurdish, of course, and others, I'm sure. So I think the missing step might have been the lack of critical engagement with his work, both in Arabic and in other languages, that has kept him relatively unknown so far. Yeah, Jayson, would you like to add anything?
Well, I would like to add that it was difficult, at least for me. I mean, when you presented me with some of the literal glosses, it was very, very awkward, shall we say, in English. And I think we even chose not to translate a few poems, if I recall correctly, because we just couldn't do it. It just didn't sound presentable or readable, I suppose, to use your term, Huda. So yeah, it was, you know, I'd give some other translators credit for giving up, maybe.
And I think I'll bring in Patrick's question as well here, because aware of time, so I want to make sure we get as many questions as possible and then have a nice wrap up. And Patrick asks, how much do our poets engage, both our poets, to Najwan and Salim? If anyone wants to answer on Salim's part, if it's possible, engage with Arab tradition of poetry, and do our translators signal, and how do our translators signal such engagement? I'll open that to anyone who'd like to come in first.
Najwan is here, so I think he can answer first. Not.
For me, I'm very much engaged in the tradition of Arabic poetry. I am just part of this tradition. I am in other traditions, but the thing which I should acknowledge is that I'm continuing the Arabic tradition. I would read Ovid and Dante, but I don't think I'm continuing their tradition, while I'm continuing the tradition of Arabic poetry from the pre-Islamic time and go on till now. So I think my sentence is very Arabic. My imaginary is very Arabic, and unfortunately, I'm very Arabic. I used to think 20 years ago that I do belong to the poetry of the world, and that I read different traditions, and I belong to various traditions, and I'm part of them. But this was an illusion. Now I'm looking myself as a very old poet who probably belonged to the pre-Islamic time, and I'm just trying to adjust the new ages. I think even I'm very pre-Islamic. I'm like, even what was happening in those 14 centuries, I'm like looking at them with a kind of strangeness. So it is a blessing to belong to great tradition, and it's also a burden. And if you always would feel search for your individuality, for your contemporary moment, because you are like a big train. You carry a lot of caravans with you while moving.
I think that's really beautifully put.
Well, I'd like to add to that, if I may. So I think in general, you can only belong to world literature by being as local as possible. I mean, your tradition is your way by which you participate in the world. And the Arabic tradition is so rich and has such a unique way of thinking. I mean, the long Arabic poetic tradition offers us such new and fresh and astounding avenues for thought. And it's such a rich tradition that one can continue to engage with it and engage with it in new ways forever. I mean, you don't have to worry about time and history if you have poetry. And there is no possible way to write poetry without engaging with the tradition. I mean, even the claim of rejecting a tradition is a form of engaging with it. With Salim's work, and I'm again answering for him as a reader, I'm not standing in for him or substituting for him. I'm a reader, and I think that he is very attuned to the Arabic tradition, both its poetic tradition and its prose tradition, because his project falls somewhere between those two. And he is always trying to blur the dividing line between prose and poetry. The Quran is present in his work, and you see him allude to it and refer to it and hint at it all the time. Pre-Islamic poetry, as Najwan mentioned, is always a starting point, or maybe an ending point for poets in Arabic. And the Abbasid age, I mean, Abu Tammam, Mutanabbi, Abu Ala al-Ma'arri, their voices are present in all of great poetry in Arabic, I think. And Salim does not deny that influence when you ask him, although he tries to downplay it. And again, that's part of his persona, the idea that he has no predecessors, but he does. And he is an avid reader, and you see that in his text. His text is difficult, yes, but it is very much a readerly text. It's a text that is a product of readings, many readings in the Arabic tradition. And the idea that he speaks no other language except for Kurdish, but he doesn't write in any other language, shows, and this minute, meticulous attention to grammar, again, and we can talk about that at length, the idea that thematically his poetry is disorienting. But if you zoom in on the level of phrase and sentence, you see what he does, and you see it clearly. You see where, you know, these openings that he's trying to create, poetic spaces inside the sentence. And those all come from in engagement with the long tradition of the Arabic language and all the sciences around it, and the tradition, definitely.
Thank you, Huda. I'm pausing only to see if anyone else would like to come in. And to thank Patrick for what's proven to be a really fantastic question. I think has brought out quite a lot of aspects of the work, because of course they do both engage in the Arab traditions, but in what ways, and in and how differently as well. We've had an hour. I'll ask Nick first. Are we wrapping up now, or do we go? Are we happy to go a few minutes longer, because we did start slightly late?
I'm happy for you to continue as long as everyone else is.
General nods. Then I think I'll come around with one more question then to each group, and then to each pair of translators and poets, and then we'll wrap up. And I think for Najwan and Kareem, I'm very interested in, I think I've got separate questions for you both, I think, but I'll ask them both now. I think for Najwan, Ta'ib al-Mu'alliqun was written in 2018, so that's 4 years. A lot has happened in 4 years, both in the world, both in Palestine, but also for yourself, surely, as a writer. And I wondered if you'd like to talk a little bit more about your recent books, and perhaps how your poetry has developed since this one came out in Arabic. And for Kareem, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the translation process, because you talk about having translated it in a time when you were moving around a lot. You translated the book across many different cities, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that and how that informed the book, which also moves quite a lot and has a lot of movement within it. And I'll pass that over to Najwan first.
After you, after Kareem.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I was nomadic when I was doing most of the work translating it, and I think I went sort of around the globe twice, but I was moving around at least every couple months, if not more. And it was an interesting process because there was so much moving in the book as well. And not every collection by Najwan is like that. There's many, particularly the ones we're kind of working on now, where they're more centered in one or two places, let's say, a lot more centered in there, where the presence of a couple geographic locations comes up a lot more, whether it's London or Haifa or Akka, Acre. So yeah, that was part of the process. And then Najwan and I mean, we work quite closely together. I'll produce a draft, first kind of rough draft, and usually have a bunch of questions, and I'll send it to him, and then he'll come back with some feedback and, are you sure you got the tone right on this? Or maybe, if there's a reference or something I'm missing, this is actually referring to this poem. Sometimes it's something pre-Islamic or something, and I don't catch it. So we go back and forth a lot until we're pretty satisfied with the end product, and that it's an excellent process, and it's been nice, and we've worked together now for a long time. I think it's been over 10 years, maybe 12. So I think we've got the process down really good. And what's nice is we both kind of have the same yardsticks, the same sort of standards, I'd say. It's really about it working as poetry in English with the translations. And so I guess I'll leave it at that, but it's quite a collaborative effort, I would say.
Thank you. Najwan, I realized I asked the question a while ago, so would you like me to repeat it, or?
You were asking about what I did after Exhausted on the Cross.
Yes.
Actually, I'm writing much more than I should, and I'm keep fulfilling notebooks with writing, which is my daily diary or observations, and they need some time to edit. I think I wrote like 7 collections since that time till now, and I'm in the process of editing. Whenever I can steal time for editing, I would work and edit some sections, in order to finalize a collection. For me, writing is a very easy thing. I'm writing always. I have my notebook with me everywhere, and whenever I have 5 minutes, I would write. But the hard work in poetry is to build a book, to build a collection, to edit, to find the relations and the tones. And here is your craft as a writer or a poet would start when you start making a book. I think everyone can write a good poem, but it's not everyone who can make a good book, a good collection. This is something else. I found it later in my life. In the beginning, I was not very aware of building a book of poetry. Exhausted on the Cross, probably it was well built. I was working carefully and on how it could be a good collection. I deleted much of the poems from it just in order to give it the right tone and the right harmony and the right message.
Thank you. And for me, as someone still aspiring to one day put a book of their own out, that's useful advice to hear, in a way, of the journey that it takes. So for Huda and Jayson, then 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. Now this one, the first one I wanted to ask is, what was the process for selecting the works for translation, since you had 50 years of poetry to choose from? What was your process of selection? And I noticed as well that there are themes within the book that the excerpts do speak to each other, themes of gardens, death, doors, animals, to name a few, actually appear in more than one book. So what themes did you consciously choose to focus on? So what was your process for selection for the translation, and what themes emerged as you did so?
Huda, I think you were the one who was primarily scouting out the poems.
Yeah, so this translation project grew on the margin of my working on my book on the Arabic prose poem. So I was concerned, or I wanted to read all of Salim Barakat's poetry. Because I was writing about him in a different context, but the poems we selected for translation were not really driven by theme as much as they were driven by, the selections were driven by our ability to maintain some kind of tension. And as I mentioned earlier, if you approach Salim's work looking for themes that you can trace, or threads, thematic threads that you can follow, you're going to be frustrated and maybe give up soon. But it's this attention to language and this interest in form, or the disruption of form. So when we came to put the selections for the translation together, there were two things we were concerned with: trying to represent, and again, representing is a horrible thing to have to do. Like, it's a daunting task to say, I'm presenting this very prolific poet in English for the first time, and my sampling of it has to be comprehensive, especially with someone like Salim, who's very prolific, publishes 1 or 2 books a year in different genres. So I like to always note that this is just an invitation to Salim. This is by no means representative of the range of his writing. And our selections were really, as I think Jayson can also speak to as well, is how successful we were going to be in presenting a poem in English, or something that comes as close as possible to convince, the elements are against me, but here, maybe this is a better angle, to be as convincing as possible as a poem in English. And theme is not always the criterion, but some kind of tension, movement, emotional or formal, that we can maintain, especially when we were selecting excerpts from book-length poems. That becomes a little bit more challenging. How can you condense this longer work, but still maintain some kind of formal integrity or emotional integrity to it?
Yeah, we really wanted to create a book that would just invite people into the greater work of the greater body of his writing. Even the title, "Come Take a Gentle Stab," is an invitation to, come and try to figure out what this is, right? I mean, kind of literally. So we chose poems that we really thought we could do justice to, and really the structure is quite simple. It's just chronological, and because it's kind of like a mixtape in a sense. If you like this, then you can go check out his albums, the complete albums. So yeah, that was really the intent, just to entice people, provide them with a little appetizer.
Thank you. I think it does come through, because in fact, one, is appetizing to read. As someone who hadn't read Salim Barakat in either language really before, apart from here or there, it was my main exposure to him in a way. And in fact, also what you say about the frustration in looking at the themes, I suppose I found that, in fact, when I was looking in a way to try and make sense of things. And I think that's where I kept trying to summarize my thoughts on it. They all just came back to this idea of sense into senselessness into sense again, that he challenges, in a way, how we understand language. I think we will have to wrap it up there, because now we have certainly crossed over the hour mark. I apologize to the last person to ask a question that we can't come to. I will wrap up with a few last things that Exhausted on the Cross can be purchased from the NYRB website. Come Take a Gentle Stab can be found through Seagull Books. Nick is putting the links in there. The Sarah Maguire Prize Anthology can be bought from the Poetry Translation Centre and their website, and that features all 6 shortlisted collections, and that also has them in side by side with English and the original language. And the next date to look out for is Tuesday, the 1st of November, when there will be an online event. The link to the event is there in the chat to announce the winner. Spaces can be booked through Eventbrite. I do apologize again to the last person because it was a very interesting question, which I wish we had time to put to our attendees tonight. I think that is all of the notices I need to give. So unless Nick wants to jump in to correct me in anything, then I will thank everyone for a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening of poetry in both languages, and for the very eye-opening debates and conversations around Arabic poetry that we've had today.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
شكرا علي، شكرا جميعا. إلى اللقاء.
مع السلامة.
السلام على اللقاء.